All right. I just want to welcome everybody this morning to the Audit and Risk Committee meeting. I'd like to start with apologies, please. Mayor Dan, has anyone heard from Sandra? Oh, so we'll just leave that for now, shall we? She might arrive soon. All right. Are there any conflicts of interest? Oh, it's all right. Thank you, Councillor. Seconder. So, Kirsten. Thank you, Kirsten. Right. No. So now conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest? Sorry. All in favour? Aye. Oh, sorry. That's a bad start, isn't it? I'm still in birthday mode. I left my phone at home.
I reckon that was done on purpose.
Oh dear. All right. No conflicts of interest and confirmation of minutes, please. Who would like to? Thank you. Thank you, Kirsten. All those in favour of the minutes being correct, please say aye. That's great. Are there any questions or matters arising from the minutes? No, none, so that's fine. Deputations, presentations, there are none of those, so that's fine. So now we're up to the reports, but Paul's not quite here. So shall we go? Oh, Marie's just gone out. Oh, that's cool. Thank you. Good morning, Sandra. And welcome. So we're just number 5.1, financial report. Paul's not quite here. Marie is here, but she's just disappeared for a moment. Is she? Marie, how are you? Paul's not just here at the moment, so. Oh, well, maybe we'll do 5.2 and we'll welcome you to the table and get your report on the recommendation on the Sefton Community Library. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This one probably needs no introduction because the committee has generously given rates remissions to this group on earlier occasions and they're still working through the process to be able to sell the property and then put the funding towards the repairs to the community hall at Sefton. There's been progress since the last meetings and the property is now in the name of the new trustees and they're working with the Crown Law Office to get the limitation to the title lifted so that they can sell it. So we're requesting a rates remission of $649.54.
Are there any questions to Marie on this? Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you, Neville. Would you like to comment?
Just very quickly saying that it's a timing issue and I know that staff have been handling this all the way through and it's just taking that little bit longer, so I'm happy to support the report.
Thank you. So I'll put the recommendation. So all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you.
So while you're there, should we just proceed on to 5.3 before we go to Paul? Would that be right? Well, we've got you at the seat. If you'd like to comment on that.
So this is a new credit control and debt recovery policy. And the purpose of it really is to have in one place some guidance for staff on if they're given credit on behalf of the council. And it could be details like making sure you've got enough information on invoices, getting back to customers if they've got questions or any disputes over accounts, and hopefully having processes that get the money in as quickly and as efficiently as we can. The other part of it is making our debtors aware that these are our processes, and if you don't pay on time, you do have the opportunity to ask us or dispute something, but we will be following collection proceedings, and these are some of the actions that we could take to recover the money.
Right. All right. Any questions of Marie? Yes, Paul.
Have we got many people owing the council money? And I'm not talking about rates at the moment, on other things at the moment that's outstanding?
The debtors ledger is really good at the moment, and it can vary. All you need is one big resource consent account that's disputed, and that can blow out. But at the moment it is looking really good. We find that staff are becoming more aware of the need to get onto things early, and we're also probably a bit more discerning about who we give credit to. Obviously there's cases where we have no choice. If somebody damages infrastructure, runs into a pole or a bridge, then all of a sudden you've got a debtor that you might not otherwise have given credit to. But the accounts are looking really good.
Thank you.
I did a trending analysis just only last week of the 30, 60, 90, and over 90 days, and it's all trending downwards over the last 3 years. So it's looking, and the reason I did that was because I was a bit worried about COVID and the effects on debt, but a lot of the efforts from the staff to actually get people on regular payments have had a big impact. But as Marie said, it's the large ones like the resource consents, which sit with developers, and they can take some time to go through the approval process to 224C and payment. They sit there for a little while.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, we have a recommendation here. Would anybody like to move that we accept the recommendation? Thank you, Paul. Seconder? Thank you, Neville. Would you like to speak on to that? Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's all under control, and good report. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one little thing. Thank you, Councillor Barnett. There's a spelling mistake that we'll correct on 3.5, disputes. We've spelled incorrectly. It's gone past so many eyes. Well done. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that. Okay, so all those in favour of accepting this recommendation, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Now, we might thank you, Marie, for your attendance, and we could welcome Paul. Would you like to come and give us your financial report for the period ended 30th of June 2021? Welcome.
Well, last week we were all practising our greetings and stuff all week. It was good fun. So the report for the financial report for the end of June 2021, the preliminary surplus was 33.1 million against a budget of 23.4. There's an explanation of the reasons for that variance in 4.2 of the report. At the end of the year, the debt was at external debt was at 170 million, which was an increase of 10 million from the previous year, but below the budget of 182 million. One other item I wrote about in the report is that we were talking about the audit, and that audit had some. There was a possibility of the audit being prolonged. At the moment, the audit's well underway. They've been providing a lot of staff, so we're really positive that that will still meet its timetable. I'll just assume the rest of the report's read, and are there any questions?
Neville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paul, just around that audit and the timing, I find it rather ironic that audit can be late, but we can't do anything late for audit. It's rather ironic that you can do that. In the future, and this one looks as though you may get there on the advice you've given us, in the future, what plans have we got, or what difference does it make if indeed this continues, certainly through COVID and things that have happened? They've indicated on more than one occasion that they could be late with their audits. What have we got in place that covers us from our end, because they're highly critical of us if we're late, if anything? What have we got from our end that if they're running late, what are the consequences to us, and what have we got in place to make sure that we've covered comms, all those sorts of things on if that happens?
So the audit have told us that they have a statutory agreement, or it's passed through statute, that they can have late audits to the end of December, and that goes right through to 2023. So they're expecting another year of this. The impact on us is that we don't get confirmation of the annual report before we go into the annual plan round. And so for councils that are under debate around their asset values or anything like that, it can be quite critical for them, because they don't start off a confirmed base where it's been audited for us. I think we are in a pretty good position where we're forecasting off pretty good information, recently valued. All of our audits have been clear. We haven't had any areas where we've been qualified in any way. So we just need to keep on performing, really, making sure it's available for audit, and making sure that when they're ready to audit it, it's available for them, and just make sure that we take all the work out of it. So Audit New Zealand have said that our work papers are one of the best around, and we're the first that do an online audit now. So they've got a new system where we upload all the information into their system, and they effectively do most of the audit online. And so when they get staff that are free, or they get staff that have come in new into the audit, and they have to, we train auditors.
Yeah.
And they use us as a good training ground. And so it works. It's a win-win for us, but because we're a growth council, they've probably looked at us and said, okay, we better audit them first as well. Some of the other councils that aren't growing are usually pushed down the line a bit, or a lot of the CCOs, which have low turnover and aren't as critical to the New Zealand economy as such, because of their turnover, they're pushed down the line a bit too.
Yeah, in a practical sense, because of level 2, they've been doing a lot of the work remotely, and they've even had auditors who are in Hamilton coming and essentially working remotely from Hamilton. Yeah.
Thanks for that. I want to make sure that we're covered for the future.
There's definitely a shortage of resource, and auditors are one of them. If you go right across the whole local government profession, there's shortages right across, and it's a bit of a big worry, particularly with engineering, with such big programs out there. There's competition with private and local government.
Thank you, and thank you. Sandra, you have a question.
I note on page 19 of the agenda, when you talk about it's in one of those tables with key items at the bottom, that we've got, we had 26,020 rateable properties in the annual plan, but the actual is 26,362. So we've got 340 odd more rateable properties than we had in our annual plan, and therefore a favourable variance. How come we're out by 340 properties? First question. The second one on the same page, the dividends, the special dividend received that we didn't budget for of 252,000. What's that?
So the number of properties, I suppose it relates to the timing of we always have to have our annual plan adopted before the end of the year, so we can never get the exact number of properties we're going to have. We tend to try and keep we do that estimate when we do the draft, and we unless it's really out, we tend to try and stick with the draft numbers, so we're not messing with the calculations too much.
Because that's quite considerable, considering we have, what is it, 500, 600 building consents for new builds during the year. So this is more than half of that.
Yeah, to put it into context, we're limited to the medium to high growth that Stats New Zealand, we put ourselves in that. And on average, that's supposed to be 480 properties per annum over a 10-year period. And so when we put those numbers through the plans, and if you remember when we set this plan, housing wasn't really moving that well, and it just suddenly took off. What happens is we do our best, it's a guesstimate of how much we get round year end, and if we get it wrong one year and wrong the next year, it can make quite a bit of an impact. And so that's what you're seeing coming through. Like this year, I think we're on track to do somewhere in the mid-700s. That's well above our 10-year average. And so we'll be projecting into our annual plan this year a similar sort of a number, regardless of where we sit with the medium to high New Zealand stat projection. We have to sit within that over the 10 years, so as we get out towards the 10 years, we start lowering that down again. And that's one of the areas which we've signalled with the our planning area, and it's the same probably across a number of Canterbury councils, is are we sitting in the medium to high, are we sitting in the high, more of the higher end of the stat projections?
Year ending June for the previous year, and don't we relook at, even though you're saying it's over a 10-year, we revisit this every 3 years significantly, and every year. So what, it just struck me that 340 properties out, which is sort of more than half, well, it's well over half the estimate you're saying you put in if you're putting in 400 odd. Shouldn't we, well, it just means, in my reading, that we're going to have a favourable variance because of the increased number of rateable properties during the year for the entire stretch of this current year, well, this new year. When we get the September quarter, we'll be presumably in the same, if not more increase.
Yep, that's correct. We'll have variance this year as well, because if you look at the LTP in 2018, we were predicting 480 properties a year then too.
This, isn't it?
We went back and had another look at it, and they're still predicting 480 properties per annum over the 10 years. So over 20 years, we're projecting 480 properties, but every so often we have spikes, like after the earthquakes, we had a growth of about 11.8%. And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the front end of those first 3 years much higher, and every time we go back and ask, the projections are still the same. So at some stage over the next 9 years, we're going to see a big dip in the amount of properties that come in that are being built in the district. Now, you'll have different views on that, but that's the data that we project off and predict from. And at the moment, if you look at a lot of the growth that's coming into the district, and I'd stand to be corrected, but a lot of it is immigration growth that's coming in. It's not growth within. Well, that has changed a little bit in the last couple of years, I think. So we'll come back with council with the annual plan this round, and we'll present those numbers again based on the recent review, just to see what that looks like. But at this stage, we're still set to do 480 properties per annum based on the forecasts that have been provided through the planning area.
So effectively, this says this is is this over and above? So the 430 is embedded in the budget, and we have achieved another 340 above that. So in fact, for that year, we were close to 800.
That's right. We did an adjustment for that to that 480 number. Yes.
It's been huge.
So this year, I think, as I said, I think we're on track to do about in the mid 700s. And look, if you ask me, I'd say it'd be the same next year. So we'll be making sure that the front end number's high, but because we are limited to where we can go with the growth in the district at some stage, I'm being told it's going to reduce at some stage. Now we have to forecast off something, and we have the ability every 3 years to adjust that. But within each annual year, we'll have an estimate on what that looks like, but we'll have to bring that back to the council. And as I said, we've already put that under a review for this annual plan.
Thank you. The dividend, the special dividend of 252,000 not budgeted, what was that?
That's from Transwaste.
Okay.
So they declare their dividends. They decide how they make that decision. We can't control that, and we estimate on past years what dividends we've received. We usually receive only the two. They give us an interim one and then a final one. And we've, being accountants, we do go a bit conservatively, but there was an extra dividend that we normally don't get that they declared.
Okay. There's another question I have, which talks about the investment properties, 2 land assets, and it's an unfavourable variance on the mixed business use area requiring remediation works, and I couldn't for the life of me think of what the 2 land assets were.
So this is the red zone area assets, and I'm the same as you, Councillor Stewart. We challenged that revaluation quite hard. We went back twice with information that suggested not to drop it, but the valuation, the valuer said it's got to do with the land use in the area and how it's currently. If there's other developments that happen in that area, you could see that being revalued back up again. But at this stage, he doesn't have that information to value it much more than effectively a little bit greater than what we would value our reserves. And so that's why you see it's a paper number, it's not a cash number.
So that's actually the land. I kept on thinking that there was actually buildings for some reason when I was reading it. Must have been dark. But so is that the red zone itself?
Yes.
Why are there 2? Is it 2 areas? They've separated the areas off.
The south, north.
It's
This is page 11.
all counted as. Sorry, I'm looking at page
28. 28 at the
Page
bottom. I'm looking at.
Which page are you on?
Yeah, I think they were combined into basically 2 big parcels of land. Yeah, all the
And is that sort
separate
of like
titles before.
north, east, and wherever, whatever we've got? North.
I couldn't tell you exactly how they. Well, we could get that information and send it around if you would like.
Oh, well, that's clear. For some reason, last night I was thinking there were buildings that we had. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Paul, you had a question?
Yeah, I've got 2 questions. 4.5, refuse and recycling, 0.7 million over budget. More residents have joined the 3 bins program, which increased disposal costs at landfill. I understand that the weights were taken into consideration when the contract select with the bins, because it was actually bought up there to make sure we had the weights right. So I understand half of it is recycling, I also understand there's a bit of allowance made for some contamination as well. So how have we got 0.7 million over budget when the more people on it, on the rubbish scheme, the actually better it off should be for council rather than the worse off?
So this point is looking at the expenditure side only. So if you look at the revenue side, there's also an increase there. So if you look at those two together, I think that's what you're saying, is that there should be a net difference which is small. So if you also looked at the revenue, there's also been an increase in revenue. So this note is only talking about the expenditure side of it.
But it's saying it's a over budget. Surely, so actually, in actual fact, what we're saying, we're not 0.7 million over budget. We're in budget then. If there's a
so both the revenue and the expenditure over budget, and the net effect is smaller than just that. So if you
maybe
look at
we should put a wee note on that if that's the case, so people understand it.
So what you're saying is they contra out each other.
Yeah. I think, hang on, if I can find the right page reference for you.
It's on page 43.
Good. Thanks, Jeff. So if you look at page 43, you'll see that the refuse and recycling, you'll see that both the revenue and the expenditure over for, and the net position is better than the budget.
So probably what you're saying is that you budget, but then with growth, that's what has caused this to happen in both ways. Would that be correct?
Yep.
Thank you. You happy with that, Paul?
I think it's probably best to look at page 43, and if you look at the operating surplus deficit, we had an annual plan budget of a surplus of operating of 30,000. We actually did 426,000 surplus, so we actually had a much improved position after revenue was accounted for. It's more than covering the costs.
Yeah, no, that's kindly. And my second question was actually with the property, so I presume the property would be the same scenario as that as well.
Yeah, we're in a growth situation, and it's a bit like, I guess, the resource consents for building. We're in a growth rate. You budget, but then the requirements outgrow the budget, and that's what happens with growth, isn't it?
Yeah. With the consents, if you recall, when we set the budget this year, we actually reduced it from the draft because of the COVID, thinking that it would be much reduced. But and I think we reduced it around 900,000 between BCs and RCs, and over combined we were 2 million over the lower budget, so we would have been 1 million over the.
Anyhow,
yeah.
Yeah, so I
everyone
know.
was.
Everybody's been under pressure.
Yeah, at that point, everyone wasn't really sure how to do what the effect of the COVID lockdowns would be over the next year.
I know, it's hard, it's tough. All right, Neville, you have a question.
Just very quickly back to what Sandra was talking about with the red zone. Just a bit of clarification, really. My understanding is that all the red zone came across as rural and fee simple. So there's actually two areas. That's what the two are about. Is that correct? One's rural, one's fee simple, all the rest. So that's why there's the two-way split in there. It's not that's my look. I mean, you'll clarify it, but that's my understanding. I just whether that's right or not.
Which page are you referring to?
Oh, it's back on.
No, it's just the reference to
Two of you.
Because there were two numbers there.
Yeah.
that go through.
Yeah, one's rural and one's. I think. Anyway, look, you can all back so it's not how it's supposed to. Yeah.
So are there any more questions or any more queries? Do you want to comment any further on it, Paul? Happy? Well, I'd like to move that we accept this recommendation of the financial report. Do I have a seconder, please? Sandra, you're seconded. That's one. I'd just like to say, in moving this recommendation, to thank Paul and Jeff and the team for an amazing job. And because I know last year getting everything ready under pressure just before Christmas was huge, and I could see the stress on your face so much, and I felt for you. But you all did an amazing job, and you still do an amazing job, and we appreciate everything that you do. You keep us in good heart. And I just want to say it's very pleasing to note, and I think it's part of our growth, is that we also have an increase in our income over budget, and our debt levels are lower than budget, so than forecasted. So that's really a good trend, and well done, and good management. So I thank you for that. So I'd like to move. All those in favour, please say aye. Oh, Alexandra, you'd like to say something?
Thank you. I endorse your comments, Madam Chair. I just would like to ask colleagues, and this is, there's a ton of information in here that is always some great read, and questions come of it. I just wondered about the value of the graphs, especially those those line ones, which are many pages here. Are they required to come through? Because the commentary is significant, valuable, and I would imagine all-encompassing, certainly for me. So I just wondered whether this, looking at the report and its readability, whether in fact we do need some of these graphs, or are we required to produce these graphs? But apart from that, in a good position. I would be concerned that our estimate of our rateable properties is so far shy, but I take the which really means that, well, I was trying to think, if that was the case, how does that roll through to all our planning for services and what have you, if in fact we are underestimating the number of rateable properties coming on stream to that degree? I mean, if it was 80 to 100, but we're talking 300 plus, which is significant. So just leave that, but always an interesting report. Thank you.
Neville, you'd like to comment?
Thank you. Yeah, look, this is a good report, and things are going in the right direction, and you're right, Madam Chair, about that. The properties being over that Councillor Stewart's referring to, that's our problem. We're the councillors. We set whether we go for medium growth or high growth. That's up to us. We have always taken the middle road in this council on a conservative side, that we look at medium growth. I mean, we can, the next time this comes up, change it to high growth. But man, you've got to look out a bit when it drops the other way. And that's the bit that what has always worried me, and why I'm not really what you would call a conservative person. But I have agreed with Jeff that I think that and I think that's always been Jeff's recommendation, is around that medium, almost steady as she goes number, to make sure that we're not. I mean, if we're on the high growth and things do stop, and I don't know whether you heard the news first thing this morning when they're talking about interest rates and things that are going to happen directly after this COVID, and the sharp rises that are being predicted in interest. What that does, if you were stuck on high growth, if we were on high growth now, we've basically got a buffer, and yes, I accept that it's a big number, 300 and something properties sitting there, but we actually have a buffer that we can work with without affecting rates in a huge manner. And I think if we were on the high and we got a sharp shift on growth, that we would be, we could put ourselves in a bit of trouble, and we could. So I actually think that sticking with the median and dealing with the, if you like, overrun, if that's what you want to call it, I think is a much better way to go than it is to be right up there at the top and taking a pretty big fall when and if things do happen. Because I think you can rest assured that at some point it is going to slow, whether that is in the next 5 years, whether it's in the next 10, or whether it's next year. But the things with these things is that you find out pretty rapidly when it comes to a bit of a slow. So I'm comfortable that this council has gone with the medium growth and advised our staff that that is the road we've wished to take. The number itself's not set by us, so that we just set the medium high or low. You know, that's all we do. The number is set by other people, so we deal with that number. If indeed that numbers, they might adjust that for us, but for other people that'd be different. So I'm pretty comfortable with that particular aspect of it. I think it's actually quite a good way to go. Easier to, but I do take on board that putting forward for infrastructure and things like that there's, you know, a 300 variance, but that's not such a big deal for us in the term. We can adjust that as we move forward. Any
other comments? Thank you, Kirsten.
Well, can I just pose that a question to Jeff then? If we are underestimating growth, what impact does it have on our infrastructure projections and planning going forward?
Yeah, I don't think we are underestimating it. We're forecasting it based on pretty good planning. We're not forecasting medium, we're forecasting more than medium. It's medium to high, and it sits right in the middle. What we're experiencing at the moment is a surge. It's a seller's market, and we're seeing a big surge in properties. Now, we have to rely on the information that's provided to us and have an assumption based around that. And each year we look at that number and say, is that about right? And I mean, for this year, for the annual plan year we're going into, we certainly wouldn't be putting the number of 480 in there. We would be, based on what's happening at the moment, it would be somewhere around the 700 to 750 property. But based on the medium to high projections and forecasts over that period of 10 years, we have no option but to actually take that growth back down over the 10 years to an average of 480, I think it might be 485 properties, new dwellings a year. And so that's the dilemma we've got that we're going to review coming into this annual plan round, and we'll put that specifically in front of the council, so we're all comfortable with the figures that we're forecasting on.
Right, everybody happy? So I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour of the financial report being accepted, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Paul, for all your work, and we look forward to continuing on. Thank you. Sorry? You do that. I know that last year, that under with COVID last year, and then having to get long-term plan and annual plan, everything done before Christmas was a huge stressful effort, and you all did really well. I really, really thank them very much. Thank you. Thank you, Nat. Now, we come to portfolio updates, and of course the first one is Audit Risk Long-Term and Excellence Program, which is myself. So I would like to report, careful now, the annual report is currently being audited on time, and there seem to be no issues arriving to date. I'm part of the project control group as well. Delay in reading of the budgets this year. We're going to give councillors and staff all of January to give everyone a good rest this year, not like last year where we came back early. We're going to give staff and councillors a good rest, and we're going to delay the reading of the budgets till February. Third thing is we're currently reviewing software and processes for submissions and to streamline the processes, and I'd ask Jeff to clarify what's happening there, please.
So the submission accomplished is the software we currently use to put submissions through, and that software is no longer being supported, as we understand, for any improvements. So leading into the annual plan for this year, we just got a little project in place to actually look at the current other, submission software that we've got in place and put a process around it. The key one which we've been experiencing issue with is with the letters, and that part of that is to concentrate on getting that one right. The other parts of the process seem to be going okay. We took it on board during the LTP round that some of the information that's brought through from the submissions, like there's the key areas where there's a summary of the submission, then there's the staff recommendation, the reason for the recommendation, and the reply that's going to go to the submitter. And we've taken on board that information needs to be improved a bit as well. So we're just going through that exercise now. So we've got a program in place to try and complete that by the end of November, so that we're well in front of the submission process that will take place around March, April next year. And just Madam Chair has just presented there's a proposal going in front of the PCG to actually extend the reading of the budgets until February, because it's not an LTP year, just to push that out until February, so it gives elected members and staff the opportunity over a pretty stressful year in COVID to have that rest over January and come back in February to read those budgets. So we'll bring the result of that back to the council, but you should see a bit of an improved process through the annual plan.
Any questions, Kirsten? Thank you.
Just the one that we have closed that loop from other issues that are brought to us during that process that are actually operational service issues. Is that loop being closed so that those issues are then followed up through the letters that are sent out?
Yeah, so the other triaging of whether it's a submission to the plan or whether it's a real true service request that can be fixed there and then, yes. So there'll be a little bit of a triage in front of that submission going in, making sure that there's a bit of communication between the submitter and ourselves as well, just to make sure we've got it right and that they think it is just a maintenance thing to be rectified. Yes.
Could I ask that special attention is paid to the community board submissions, because some of those are long-term issues that aren't service requests, but they get an advice that it is going to be looked into, and we've got to make sure that it is done for community boards.
Yep.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Any other questions there? Paul?
Just a wee bit of a tongue-in-cheek. The auditors at audit councils, are they the same auditors groups that audit Three Waters on their facts and figures they're supplying councils?
No.
Oh, that's good then.
So that process hasn't started until, So the Auditor General hasn't been requested to do any audits over the proposals at this stage.
And that was one of the questions that we did ask them, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Just to clarify, the auditors are not. So the Audit New Zealand is almost like it's a separate unit or department to the Auditor General. They work independently, and they pass what the requirements are down each year. Just as Audit New Zealand do that, they also take it out to the market, and you'll get some of the big four auditing councils as well. So I think Timaru, for instance, is audited by one of a commercial company, and so I understand a Canterbury Museum, for instance, it's another one. There's a lot of entities that are audited other than Audit New Zealand. It's done on a contractual basis, and that's to make sure that it's tested and there's you've got a standard uniform through the country, and pricing is all done the same.
All right. Okay, so we'll move on to... Oh, sorry, Jim, you'd like to say, and welcome.
Yeah, Jeff and I did have a conversation with the Office of the Auditor General and suggested that they may want to have a look at these numbers on behalf of Parliament, but I don't think they have the mandate yet, but at some point they should.
just keep on, keeping on. All right, thank you for that. Kirsten, we'd like to hear about customer service from you. Thank you.
To be honest, Madam Chair, this COVID has actually caught me on the hop and I haven't had a chance to catch up with Marie during lockdown. So
that's right.
this month it will be a very quiet report and just say customer services is doing their thing really well, as usual. Thank you.
Thank you. Now communications, Neville, thank you.
Well, very much the same. Haven't been really near the building much, but I have been talking to Alistair, and of course they've been tied up pretty much with COVID and district plan, still tidying up the end of the flood. The flood stuff that's happening as well. So most of you have probably received the communication that's gone out.
Yep.
So they've been working pretty heavily on those things, and of course their report, the final comms report is due in June is due, so that's all but done, is my understanding. Just I think management, it's got to go through management first before it's released. So that's where they're at, and obviously you'll hear from comms this afternoon. When we have a chat. So all right.
Any questions of Neville? Thank you, Neville. No, we just go on to any other questions that anyone might have. No. Urgent general business. So we will close the open meeting for now, and we'll move into public excluded and give the girls time, a couple of minutes to...
Well, it's